On this episode, we smoke the Rojas Street Tacos Barbacoa, and we talk about the structure of the cigar industry. Buckle up, let's go for a ride. Burn Line Podcast. The burn line on a well-crafted cigar is straight and sharp as a razor, much like our wit and wisdom. And welcome everybody to Burn Line Podcast, brought to you not live from the smoky back room of Blanco Cigar Lounge, Union Cigars, Hanover, Pennsylvania, USA, where deals are struck and fortunes are made. Ladies and gentlemen, whoever and wherever you are in time and space, welcome to Burn Line. I'm your host, John Thacker Jr.
Y me llamo Nicolás.
And that's your other host, Nicholas McCann. For those of you that don't speak butchered Spanglish.
Spanglish, yeah. I'm out of practice.
So this Rojas Street Taco. All right, so this is one of my favorite cigars, actually.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, I love this cigar. So I'm excited that we get to smoke this one. Why don't we tell everybody a little bit about the cigar? We are smoking a 6x50 Toro. This cigar retails for $9.50 here at Union Cigar Hanover, while a box of 16 will cost you $137, which is a savings of $15. And it is wrapped in an Ecuadorian Sumatra wrapper, and the binder and filler are Nicaraguan. This is, of course, blended by Noel Rojas at the Rojas Cigar Factory in Nicaragua. So presentation. If we start with the cigar, we have what I would call a Colorado wrapper. I know that's kind of an old school term, but in terms of color, it has a not oily wrapper. There's basically no oil on feel or sheen, low oil. Has this orange band with the Dia de los Muertos skull with the mustache that kind of reminds me of me, actually.
It's super cartoony.
It is super cartoony.
There is a very controversial band.
Yeah, well, I don't know, like, it goes with street tacos. To me, it looks like
Absolutely.
the branding that would be on a street taco cart.
These old heads that have smoked cigars for like 30 years, though, they look at it and they just walk right by it in the humidor because
They assume
they're
it's
like,
flavored, infused.
yeah.
Yeah.
You put a cartoon on a cigar?
Yeah. No, I can see that. You know, like it doesn't have the Gothic script lettering and like the shield or maybe the maiden rolling tobacco. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Not traditional. I kind of like it though, and it presents in a very modest box that matches the color and branding. I think I really like the branding from a business standpoint. I can see where the serious cigar smoker, might accidentally walk by because it looks like it might be an infused product or something.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you are into cigars, you better know who Noel Rojas is, and you better know what the street taco is. So that's a little bit about the cigar and the presentation. The wrapper is just kind of regular. It's not super fine. It's not rustic. It's just there.
Not toothy. There are
toothy.
no bumps on it.
No bumps on it. It does have the closed foot, and this is a regular Parejo shape. So, and I notice on the band, it says in small lettering, small ring gauge only. And of course, this is a 6x50.
Yeah, this is a kind of a company theme for Noel Rojas. I think the 50 in the Street Taco is the largest size they make it. And then I know for his other blends, like the Blue Bonnets and the Statement, I think they also max out at 50. He really embraces the ideology of wrapper to filler ratio and getting the most out of that wrapper leaf.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I know he's got quite a passion for cigars, and I think it's going to come through. I know it's going to come through because I've smoked a dozen of these, but we'll smoke another one for the podcast. And this is the one with the orange band of the Barbacoa. This was the original, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And recently he came out with the Carnitas, and that is a lighter wrapper. It's still a medium full cigar.
Yeah, Connecticut shade on that one.
Yep.
This box is like, the box for the Barbacoa is like cactus green.
Right.
Yeah. And then the new one's like a cheesy orange.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
All right. So that is the introduction to the cigar. It is time for our official cut and light. We will begin by cutting our cigar, brought to you by Union Cigar, Hanover, Pennsylvania, USA. Stop by and pick up a Street Taco Barbacoa and find out for yourself. As always, we remind you to clip that cigar with authority. No limp-wristed cutting allowed.
I'm using this. Someone gave me this cutter the other day, and it's like you've seen these like fan fold.
Cigar X1.
Yeah. Is that the model?
Well,
Pretty much.
it's either a Cigar X1 or a ripoff of a Cigar X1.
Yeah.
Oh. There's a lot of ripoffs out there.
Yeah. But I don't love these.
What is your concern with it?
It's maneuverability. I can't cut my cigar with one hand. Like it's
Interesting.
It's very tough. I can't to open it, and then it's just not like I'd much rather put my fingers through the two slips on the side and just snap it shut.
And we are doing the old taparoo. So for those of you that are just joining us, after clipping your cigar, you can turn it over and tap the head gently on the back of your hand. I prefer to use the fleshy part of my hand between my thumb and first finger. And all that does is just loosen up all that dottle and small clippings and keep them from getting on your tongue. And it's funny because we were just watching a YouTube video, very professionally done, superb presentation and videography. And the guy smoking the cigar takes his first puff. First thing he does, reaches into his mouth with 3 fingers and scrapes the shit off of his tongue.
Yeah.
Right?
Pulls out a bale of tobacco.
Oh, right. Well, this can prevent that.
Yeah.
And it's time for our official lighting. Now, today we are going to introduce you to something a little different. So, Noel Rojas, the man himself who constructed this cigar, has said that the reason for the closed foot is because the blender wants you to taste the wrapper. And so instead of a traditional roast, we are going to light the closed foot wrapper and take a puff and taste that wrapper before moving on to our traditional toasting of the cigar. Now, because Noel constructed this cigar and because he says this is the purpose of the closed foot, we are going to smoke it the way that he intended. Now, that's not to say that all closed foots were put there for that reason. There's a lot of marketing and branding that goes into cigars. For example, I can't think of any good reason to put a shag foot on a cigar other than how it looks in the box.
So closed foot is when the wrapper
Is longer than the binder and filler.
and kind of encloses the binder and the filler, and then shag foot is when the binder and the filler stick out further than the wrapper.
Yeah.
Which is it looks like a broom.
It's also harder to do than you would think just by looking at it. Like that's actually hard to roll. Yeah. So instead of our usual roasting first, we are going to just light the closed foot and taste it the way that he has asked us to and see how we like it. Oh, that's interesting. I think I know why he wanted us to do that. Because that wrapper, to me, it tastes like oily ground beef mixed with chili powder.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it really does taste like taco meat almost.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool.
That's very cool. All right, well, that is burned off, but the cigar is not lit, and so we are going to proceed with our toasting. And as always, we remind you to toast your cigar. Don't roast it.
Toasted, not roasted. Toasted, not roasted. Toasted, not roasted.
It's toasted. I get it.
Thanks for the rescue light. As usual, my lighter decided to work perfectly right up until the podcast recording.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, but it happens to me more.
Maybe you're the best of us.
I'm the best of the best, clearly, based on my lighter performance. All right, so I've got a few draws there. That's really interesting. So I think for me, the positive and the negative of tasting the wrapper first The positive is it feels like a sneak preview to me. The negative is it's far more flavorful than the first draw on the cigar. So my initial tasting notes are really, there is some pepper. You can tell there's Nicaraguan tobacco in here. But it's very much a wood flavor, kind of a flat wood flavor. And chalk. I'm going to say dry wood and chalk.
Yeah.
Is kind of how it tastes to me.
I think it's like a, you're watching a choir, and you got that one guy that or gal that comes up and does their little solo bit. Mm-hmm. That was the first part of the rapper,
right?
And then they like step back into the rest of the choir, and they all do their thing, and it's like, all right, this is the body now. This is with the filler and the binder lit. So it's that standout star was the rapper in the beginning, but then it kind of eases back with the rest of the cigar.
And I feel like it's going to come to the forefront as the cigar smokes down. And the reason I'm saying that is I've smoked quite a few of these, and that's what happens. So hashtag spoiler alert. I will let you guys know as we smoke this, not live, how this particular stick turns out. But after smoking half a dozen of them, that's been my experience.
As I say, it's no secret between the two of us that we thoroughly enjoy this cigar.
Yeah. Oh, this is absolutely on my probably weekly smoke list.
Yeah. At the price, yeah. Well, we'll get into that later, I guess, right?
Yeah, well, we will gauge it on its price, but at $9.50 for a 6x50 Toro, this is
with this flavor.
Yeah. This is a phenomenal smoke at this price point.
Yeah.
It really, like, you can go through, there's fucking, like, infused cigars that sell at this price point, and here you're getting very nice flavor. If you like robust flavor, the Ecuadorian Sumatra wrapper adds some of that kind of mellow spice rack element that you would expect kind of from Sumatra. And then the double Nicaraguan binder and filler, it's robust. Nicaragua is growing some amazing tobacco right now, and you can taste it in this stick for sure. So, Nick, tell me your thoughts on the flavor at this point.
This is sweet.
Yep.
I get a little sweetness out of this cigar. I don't know if it's me, if it's my weird tasting, but this like earthy sweetness.
Yeah, that's a good call.
From the Sumatran wrapper is just it's like maybe a s'more that you dropped in the dirt.
Yeah.
You got a little bit of dirt still on there, but you love the chocolate, you love the marshmallow, you love the graham cracker.
Yeah.
You're still going to eat that shit.
Yeah. I like that. I think I shy away from the term sweet because there are sweetened cigars. Mm-hmm. And that's probably just me being a little condescending to our audience, but I think that's a great call. Yeah, this is like a, you're on a camping trip and you drop your s'more in the dirt.
Yeah.
And you lick it up anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a sweet flavor there, and it's hard to explain, but I would call it a dry flavor. Like to me, it tastes like dry wood, dry chalk, dry graham cracker.
Is it the taste for you, or does it also have that effect on your palate? Like, is it a drying effect, or is it just a drying taste?
It's just the taste. Yeah. It tastes like dry materials, if that makes sense. I'm not sure exactly how to say it, but that's how it tastes to me. And I would peg this initially as mid full. What do you think?
Yeah. I think you're right on the mark with that. Mid full. Definitely not too like we did blackened,
right?
And we did the Miami. And I think this is like lighter than the two of those.
Yeah.
Not only optically, but in terms of power and strength. But this isn't a Connecticut shade. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This has got a little bit of kick to it.
Yeah, in terms of the robustness of the flavor, I think this already exceeds the M81 easily. And while it's not as strong as the Herrera Esteli Miami, it does have probably a first and second and third flavor that play well together and it's just really enjoyable. As you kind of chew the smoke, the retrohale adds another element. You can really play with this smoke, even just 1 inch in like a ham, and have a really great time. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I freaking love this cigar, man. He just came out with a series called the Breakfast Taco, which I think is hilarious.
Interesting.
And it's a bunch of little like petite perfectos, like petite salmons.
Nice.
And they make the one in this wrapper, one in the carnitas wrapper, and then one they actually have a Maduro. But yeah, they're just like cute little street tacos that they're calling breakfast tacos.
That's pretty cool. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Noel Rojas' journey from Cuba and what he's up to these days?
So Noel is I should say Rojas Cigars is based out of Nicaragua right now. I think he just actually opened his own factory, which is
Rojas Cigar Factory.
Rojas Cigar Factory, right, which is a part of what we're going to get into later about vertical integration, not having to pay someone else to make your cigars for you.
Right.
And he is, like you said, of Cuban descent, born in Cuba, and emigrated out of Cuba into, I believe, straight to Nicaragua, but was a cigar roller in Cuba as a teenager.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that Rojas brings to his craft, yes, he was, embedded in the industry, and all of that, but he had ideas. Like, he's really passionate about this, and it comes through in his product. They're unique. He has ideas like the small ring gauge only, and he's had a chance to sort of introduce cigars into our experience, in the cigar industry that are different, that stand out, that are unique. And is it fair to call Rojas boutique?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
He has so one of my favorite parts about Rojas's brand is he has a kit with like 27 different puros. Mm-hmm. That's like, all right, this is, he says, in this section we're going to smoke cigars from Esteli.
Right.
And it's like, all right, here's a Velado Puro of the Corojo variety. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's like, here's this little cheroot thing that you can just taste what this tastes like. Mm-hmm. And it's just, there's no like complexions to it. There's no fighting.
Single leaf.
Yeah. It's like this is what that tastes like. And I love that.
Yeah, and I think that kit runs a couple $100. Is that right? Mm-hmm. For our listeners out there, if you are really interested in kind of learning the base flavors that go into the blend, highly recommend. What a wonderful experience. You've got your different regions, and each little cigar is just from that region, and it can kind of help you as you're tasting your cigar. Like, hey, wait a minute, I think I'm tasting, Esteli or another region of tobacco, and of course, it doesn't get into all the complexity of aging and that sort of thing. But this is kind of like a blender's kit, for the common man or whatever. Because this is what blenders do: is they'll take a leaf and roll it up and smoke it. And,
right.
Okay, maybe this goes with this other leaf, and
it's like, it's ingredients to a meal, a cake.
Yeah. It's like the individual ingredients. So yeah, it's pretty cool, and it's just another example of he has his ear to the ground. What is missing in the industry, and then he just does it. You can't get that from other companies.
Yeah, and I think he talks about the sophisticated consumer, which is an interesting, I think, maybe 21st century concept because of the flow of information that we get.
Right.
And he asks, in one of my favorite interviews that he does, he asks Brian Dezen of Privada Cigar, what's one of your favorite cigars? Why do you like it, right? What flavors do you get? And then he says, what tobaccos give you those flavors? And that's like the whoa.
Right.
Like, I have no idea. And so this kit then, and the way he does this thing really helps bring that to light. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's got some multimedia as well, right? There's some videos and online resources to help you know what you're doing and enjoy what you're doing. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think that he's kind of blending the best of old school hand-rolled cigars, premium cigars, with new school technology and mindset and that sort of thing. I love it because I'm a cigar nerd, and this has been my hobby for quite some time. And, 20 years ago, the companies played their cards pretty close to the vest.
Yeah.
It was much more common to have proprietary blend.
Oh, dude.
And now they're telling you, like, here's the microclimate in the country, and here's everything we did to it.
We watered it with pH 9 water.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Which is cool,
That's awesome.
I think it enhances my experience smoking cigars.
Steve Saka's a big one of Dunbarton Tobacco. He does that too, where he's like, this is Habano 92 or Corojo 92 Seiko,
Right.
2 leaves,
Right.
2 leaves in the filler of that, and then he just tells you like exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and also kind of getting a window, a little peek into the craft and craftsmanship that goes into what you're doing, and that is the new method for consumer products.
Yeah, when I was a kid, a Nike ID was a big thing.
Oh
Where
yeah,
you could like build your own Nike shoe.
yeah. When I was in college, I remember that.
Yeah, when I was 8, and John was a senior.
Right. Yeah, so I think mixing traditional, old school, beautiful, delicious smokes with, the informed and intelligent consumer, and helping us enjoy the craft more. I think it's a great thing, and clearly he knows what he's doing based on what we're smoking today and some of his other product offerings. So we're a good, I don't know, I'm about 30 millimeters into my cigar right now. I'll say that the pepper has picked up a little bit. I'm still like the carrier note, I call it, which is like the main flavor, is still like chalky wood. There's some like dry coffee grounds in there. And I keep adding dry to all of these these flavors, and
But it's still it still doesn't have a drying effect. It's just a drying flavor.
yeah, it's like a flavor of dry components, but the cigar is not dry and the smoke is not dry. It's just flavor notes that I'm talking about.
Yeah, because like wet wood smells different than
Right.
sawdust.
Right.
Dry sawdust. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And with that, it is time for our tobacconist tip of the week. Nick, take it away. And now your tobacconist tip of the week with Nicholas McCann.
Hi, everyone. My tobacconist tip of the week this week is that you don't have to use a humidor, a traditional cedar humidor box looking thing, to store your cigars. You can actually use other things. A couple of other things that work are food grade Ziploc bags that seal, Tupperware containers that are, weather seal. They're food grade. They don't. You brought up a good point about them breathing, letting them breathe. That's a good point. You have to open it. You will have to open it from time to time. You can't just shut it in there and not. But to say that you need a wood cedar humidor to store your cigars is incorrect. There are alternatives, so don't feel like if you don't want to maybe make a commitment to a box humidor.
$500,000 commitment. Yeah. And the as well as the good old fashioned Herfador.
The Herf, yep.
Which is basically a Tupperware container that looks cool and that you can take with you to the cigar shop.
Yeah, super durable travel case.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep a couple cigars in there with a small Boveda pack. Yeah, these are all viable options to store your cigars. You don't have to spend the big bucks on a cedar-lined humidor to get that same effect of, proper care and storage.
Yeah, I think a couple of things there. If you're not buying cigars and holding them, there's not really a purpose for a humidor. Now, I have a humidor that I store collectibles in.
Yeah.
Right. I have some cigars I'm saving, and I have a humidor for cigars I'm going to smoke. And some of them are, for example, the fresh rolled cigars that Francisco rolled for me the other week. I've got to keep them to age. And there's other cigars I'll buy that, the Magic Toast by Alec Bradley, for example, I have to leave that in my humidor for 3 months because it tastes different and it's a much better cigar. I don't know why, but it is. But most of my other cigars I buy and smoke, and they rarely last longer than 3 days or a week. So there's no reason to have a humidor. The benefits of a humidor are you can put your cigars in there, maintain your humidity. It is breathable already. And you can leave your cigars in there for a while. The downside is there is a cost and there is some maintenance.
Yeah, the seasoning bit, right? You're making sure you do that right. You don't want to warp the wood and over humidify it.
Which I don't. I don't season my humidor. That's a story for another time.
Shh, it's a secret.
Well, it's a pain in the ass, and it always ends up like mildewing, no matter how much you distill the water. But anyway. The downsides of plastic is it's not breathable, so it does take some maintenance. Like you got to open it up, from time to time and let that air circulate. But that can be as easy as an evening ritual. I'm gonna go watch my latest episode of Yellowstone. While I'm doing that, I'm gonna open the top and let the air circulate a little bit.
Shout out to Stolen Throne Cigars. Stolen Throne apparently made the cigars for Yellowstone.
Shout out to Stolen Throne. I haven't seen any cigars in that show. I mean, if we're being honest, my wife's really watching it, and I'm there for moral support.
Wow,
she likes her Cowboys. That's why she's with me. So
I feel like that's right up your alley. Yeah, that genre.
Well, I mean, the acting is really good. The characters are interesting, but the story and plot line are just, like they've got the evil Indian who's like trying to take down the guy, and it's like, really, does this happen in real life? I mean, come on, man, But that's just me. My willing suspension of disbelief has limits. So this is not a show about TV shows. This is a show about cigars. So thank you for that tobacconist tip of the week. And as we enjoy this Rojas Street Taco Barbacoa, I'm going to talk to you about the structure of the cigar industry. This is a topic that a lot of cigar smokers are not well informed on. And so I wanted to take the time to educate all of us a little bit on what does the cigar industry look like? And to do that, we're going to take a tour first of what it takes to make a cigar. And then we're going to talk about some of the, players in those different spaces. And then we're going to wrap it up by talking about Cubans, because Cuban cigars are a little bit different thanks to their national politics.
Unique system of government.
Yeah, unique system of government. We'll call it that. So, for starters, with your cigar, there is the actual product, right? It requires growing tobacco, right? So you have growing the tobacco leaf. And then you have the blending. So this is the person that decides kind of how these leaves are going to go together or whatever. And it's really similar to the master blender taster in a whiskey company, or the chief sommelier for a wine company. And then you have the constructing of the cigar, right? So you have to have a cigar factory that, takes leaves. Now, all of these different parts can merge together. So after you grow the leaves, you have to hang them up and dry them and age them. And then you put them in pilons and you age them further. And, it wouldn't surprise me if a big chunk of the tobacco that we're smoking today is 5 or 6 years old from the time they put that seed in the ground. So, and then you have the factory that bunches the tobacco and then rolls it, and then you end up with your cigar. And, the different parts of that whole system can be mushed together in different ways. So you have some factories that it is just a factory, and different companies bring them finished tobacco and they make cigars. You have farms that also age, and you have farms that don't.
Right.
And you have aging rooms attached to factories, and you have aging rooms that stand alone. So all of this can be chopped up in a lot of different ways. And like most businesses, there is a spectrum from 100% outsourcing to full vertical integration.
Yeah.
So one company that is fully integrated is Perdomo. They even make their own bands and boxes.
Nice.
They make their own hybrid seeds. They have their farms, everything from soup to nuts, vertically integrated.
Soup to nuts. I think AJ Fernandez is one of them too.
I believe so.
They do a really, really good job. And honestly, it can. I mean, I hate to speak about it like I am down there and I know exactly what's going on, but it can affect price. Like having all right, let's grow the tobacco here in X country, X city, and then harvest it and ship it 1,000 miles to the next place. Right. Get someone else to bunch it.
Right.
Or age it or whatever, and then ship it to another place where they bunch it and roll it, and they press it. But oh wait, we have the cigars ready, and now we need someone to make the boxes for us.
Well, I think this is one reason why Perdomo's price point is so competitive.
Exactly. Yeah.
By the way, that is a beautiful ash on that cigar.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done. I just dropped mine all over the table. Dustbuster to the rescue. Shout out to Black & Decker. # not sponsored. So that's kind of the physical product. Now, you also have the business side, right? And don't forget, you have to have boxes and you have to have bands. And those are things that, maybe a cigar company like a tobacco farmer might not be good at, right? So you have those elements. And then you have distribution. Yep. You have branding. You have pricing. You have business management, right? All of the other things. And so a good analogy, I think, for us would be somebody that does drywall, right? So you have a tradesman and he does drywall and he might be really damn good at it, but he might not be good at the business side. And this is why, some craftsmen go out of business. They don't know how to price. They don't know how to be competitive in the space.
Even customer relations, I guess, right?
Customer relations, sales. We've probably all met that specialist who was really good at plumbing, but you didn't want him in your home because he was a grouch, right?
There he was dressed, whatever. He didn't dress well enough. He dressed, he had holes in his shirt and whatever.
I mean, there's a reason that plumber's crack is a thing, right?
Yeah. It actually exists, people.
So those are all elements of putting a cigar in my mouth and enjoying it. Right? All of that has to happen. So I'm going to go out on a business limb here and talk about the two things that confuse consumers, I think, the most in the cigar industry. And that would be business management and branding, right? So brand is an interesting concept because you can have a registered brand, a registered trademark, something like that. But a brand is really the customer experience. And it is not a physical thing. So an example would be you have the Ford Explorer, right? Everybody's probably heard of that. Well, Ford is a brand. It is also a company, but there is a collection of emotions and experiences Ford wants you to have when you see the Ford logo. That's their brand. But Explorer is also a brand, right? It's associated with the outdoor lifestyle, Eddie Bauer, all of this stuff. So you have a brand owned by a brand, which is also a company, right? So in the cigar industry, we are smoking the Rojas Street Taco Barbacoa, for example, right? That's the actual model. That's the cigar we're smoking. The Barbacoa is like the characteristics of the cigar, the particular blend, right? And the Street Taco is a brand of Rojas.
Yep.
Rojas wants to have a brand for Rojas as well.
Yeah.
Now, we know this because you take Davidoff cigars. How do you think of Davidoff compared to Perdomo?
The first thing is Davidoff tend to have a higher price point. Mm-hmm. From a retailer's perspective, Davidoff encourages you very strongly to have its own section of your humidor, right? So they make these things that they would like you to buy, that like they install. It's a big white Davidoff humidor, pretty much.
Right.
Perdomo doesn't quite beg for that. Not beg. Ask.
Demand.
Demand.
Let's use the right word here. Yeah, like Davidoff is high end, luxury, expensive. Perdomo is more blue collar, everyday smoke, accessible, affordable, right?
I was trying not to let my retailer side bias get in the way of whatever you were asking me, so I'm sorry I didn't deliver.
No, but the retailer's perspective is going to be different from the consumer. But so brand perception, right? That's the difference in brand, right? And so as we smoke cigars, we can confuse brands with companies, right? And then that kind of dovetails nicely into the business management side of the cigar industry. So all of the things that it takes to bring a cigar to market can be chopped up and done by different people, different companies, different registered businesses. And because, if you're buying from a cigar company to stock the humidor, you're not writing a check to the company that we associate with this cigar. They're actually registered under a different name, right? So Padron, for example, you're not writing a check to Padron Company, right? They have a different registered business name.
Drew Estates. I think they go by Drew Estate DBA.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. A DBA, or doing business as, is the brand name of the company, but it could be John and Nick LLC doing business as Burnline Podcast.
Right.
In which case you might write the check out to Burnline DBA if you choose to sponsor this show, which we highly recommend. So let me talk through a little bit about who owns what in the industry. So, of course, you have growers, like we mentioned, and agers, and factories, and distribution. Let's start with some of the big cigar companies. This is the business management side, right? Boutique Blends Cigars. They're out of Jacksonville, right? If you've ever heard of Habana Cuba Company, that's what they used to be known as. So they produce hand-rolled cigars. They're not that old, 1996. If you've heard of Oliveros brand,
Yeah.
how about Aging Room?
Absolutely. Yeah. These are. Should I spoil it?
Go ahead.
These are all under the Altadis brand of cigars.
So all of those are made by Boutique Blend Cigars. Boutique Blend Cigars is owned by Altadis. Altadis is owned by Imperial.
Man.
So Imperial Cigar is the largest cigar company, management company in the world. Of course, they're out of the UK. So their revenue last year was over $41 billion.
Oh, my God.
Right? Big chunk of the market cap. Jeez. So Imperial brands. And basically they own sub-brands. And
So let's do this real quick, all right? Imperial Brands is the top, then Altadis, then Aging Room.
No, then Boutique.
Then Boutique Blends.
Which makes Aging Room.
Which makes Aging Room. Which is... So then it gets confusing, right? Then under Aging Room is Master Blender, Rafael Nadal. Under Nadal is a brand within Aging Room.
Right.
Quattro, Nicaragua.
Yep.
And then the size, the blend, the shape.
Right.
All that stuff.
So
Vitola, it's like an
that.
8-tier.
Yes.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And it's fairly typical. And one of the reasons for cigar companies being bought up by bigger companies, has to do with the amount of skill and resources and money that goes into bringing these products to market. You have to have a legal team. Hate to say it, but you do.
Especially with this product.
With this product,
Yeah.
yep. And you have to have distribution. When we're talking about distributing product, you might think it's as easy as loading up UPS. Well, maybe when the cigars make we call it white glove or final mile, from a distribution center in the U.S. to Union Cigar Hanover, for example. But how do you get millions of cigars out of Nicaragua?
Right.
Well, shipping containers.
Across Nicaraguan borders into United States borders.
Yeah. Well, they typically go by ocean. It's a lot faster than trying to go overland. And you're much less likely to get hijacked unless you are an oil tanker near Iran, but we won't get into that.
And then there's not even to mention there's the sustainability of how do we treat the cigars when they're
Sure, yeah.
on the ship.
Yeah.
You know, like who do we need to talk to
Right.
to make sure that we're doing this correctly?
Yeah.
It's like even another cog in the machine. Another step in the process.
And a lot of your smaller and boutique brands will share transportation with a large brand. There's a lot of collaboration that goes on in the industry. In 2022, the 9th largest cigar company was Arturo Fuente, and they're headquartered in Tampa, Florida. Their revenue was $500 million. So they're famous for Ashton and Arturo Fuente, of course. Very old, right? 1912, I think, originally Cuban.
Yeah.
And they're continuing to produce some really good cigars. Of course, I think we're familiar with the flagship Opus X.
Opus X, Hemingway, Don Carlos.
Now, Fuente is not owned by J.C. Newman, although you'll hear that rumor.
Right.
They do have a production agreement with Newman. So this is the sharing thing we talked about.
It gets so funny and complicated.
Yeah. So Fuente will produce cigars for Newman when Newman can't meet demand, and Newman will produce cigars for Fuente when Fuente can't meet demand. So they sort of share factories, but it's a collaboration agreement. It's not an ownership structure.
Right. They're like, all right, let's pool our resources and help each other out when we need to.
Right.
But then, and I might be getting ahead of where you're going, so just let me know. But then Fuente is sold under Newman.
Their distribution.
Yeah.
That's correct.
United States distribution for Fuente is J.C. Newman.
Yes.
And J.C. Newman also distributes its own stuff.
Yeah.
So Fuente might make the cigar for J.C. Newman, but then J.C. Newman's the entity that distributes and sells it.
And some Fuente cigars are made by Newman.
Right.
Yep. Now, probably everybody has heard of General Cigar, right? Out of Richmond, Virginia. They're not very high on the list, actually. They're
What?
number 8.
This is a shock.
Well, the latest revenue numbers that I have, and this is by revenue, the latest numbers I have is 2021, and they were 6.5 or 650 million. So General Cigar, they've got some brands like Ramon Iones, CAO, Cohiba. If you didn't know that American Cohiba that you're smoking is a General Cigar.
And not a Cuban.
And not a Cuban.
Yeah.
So those are the brands that are distributed by and owned by General Cigar. But guess what? Might be surprised to know General Cigar is also owned by Scandinavian Tobacco Group. They acquired General in 2016. So you're smoking a Cohiba. It's produced by, owned by General Cigar, which is owned by Scandinavian Tobacco Group. So layers on layers on layers.
STG also owns like Sutliff, I believe.
Yep.
Which is a pipe tobacco brand. So they're, and some of the companies too, they branch out into non-cigar production. So like, just as an example, right? Some of them might make their own brand of humidors.
Yeah.
Or they might make their own brand of humidification or
And
cutters and lighters.
Right. And the bigger you get, the more likely that they're involved in cigarette production as well.
Yeah.
Right. Just ahead of General is Oettinger Davidoff, which we just call Davidoff here. They're headquartered in Basel, although there is a U.S. Company. So Davidoff, we all know about Davidoff, and then Davidoff has sub-brands or brands that they own, like
Avo?
Like Avo, Camacho, what's the other one?
Ferriotego is a special one. They have Baccarat.
Baccarat.
They
yeah,
have,
Ferriotego
Yeah.
has they distribute them.
They have the Griffins, I think.
Also Winston Churchill.
Winston Churchill, yep.
And they have quite a lot of resources in the Dominican Republic. They have plantations in Brazil. And it might not surprise you to learn that Davidoff is also owned, and they are owned by Imperial Brands, who bought them in 2006. Right? So if you're smoking a Avo, it's produced and distributed by Davidoff, who is owned by Imperial Brands. Right. So that brings us to Altadis, right? At 1.3 billion in revenue. They're one of the big players that we know of. They're based out of Madrid, Spain, and they came to be right at the turn of the millennium when Tabacalera and SEITA, the two largest tobacco companies in Spain and France, merged. So Altadis is very unique. Obviously, they sell, some established brands like Don Diego, etc. What are some Altadis cigars in the Union Humidor?
We carry a good deal of Monte Cristos. Again, not Cuban, which is, I don't know if you're going to touch on this, but there are non-Cuban, Monte Cristos, and there are Cuban Monte Cristos, right? And you'll talk about Habanos later. Romeo and Juliet's another one. Romeo y Julieta. Trinidad, Aging Room, H. Upman are probably the 5 biggest names.
Yep. So, and Altadis USA is a subdivision of Altadis for the United States. They also have 800 JR Cigar, which is a very large online retailer.
Yeah. And General and CI. STG on CI, I should say.
Yep. So that's Altadis. There are 2 unique aspects of Altadis. The first is that, surprise, they're owned by Imperial Brands.
Yeah.
So Altadis operates on their own, but they are a subsidiary of Imperial Brands, which, in case you haven't figured it out, is the big kahuna. But the other thing is, and this is interesting, Altadis owns half of Habanos SA. So Habanos SA, which we will kind of wrap the segment up talking about.
Altadis International owns half of.
That's correct.
Habanos SA, not Altadis USA.
Correct.
Right.
Yes. Habanos SA is the state-owned Cuban tobacco company. So interesting. They're half communist. I don't know, but Altadis owns half of that. Right. So they're a little capitalist, right?
I wonder if Habanos required them to buy half the company for the United States trademarks for.
Yes, and we'll talk about that when we talk about Habanos and how they operate. Scandinavian Tobacco Group, I'm sure you're familiar with them. I'm sure our listeners have heard of them because they're a big player. They also own the online retail pipesandcigars.com.
Pipes and Cigars, Cigars International, Cigar Bid.
And I think it was 2018 they acquired Thompson Cigar.
Yep, Thompson,
so that's a big one.
Yeah.
So they have CAO, Macanudo. Those are owned by Scandinavian Tobacco Group. So they're a big player, again, over $1 billion in revenue. And then, of course, Swedish Match. This is one that is fairly large international company that is less likely to be heard of, I think. They operate in 11 countries. They have over 6,000 employees. And I think they produce 1 billion cigars that are sold in the United States.
Wow.
However, these are, Swedish Match is not known for premium hand-rolled cigars. They're known for gas station cigars.
Yeah.
That's what we call them. So like White Owl, Garcia, Garcia Vega, those sorts of things. But they make a lot of money, and they're a big player, and they consume a lot of tobacco.
I was going to say, that's a very important part that I don't think people realize. Nick Melillo, actually, I heard this from him, but the largest buyer of Connecticut broadleaf in the world is Backwoods.
Mm-hmm.
Ridiculous.
Yep. And that puts pressure on those people that make the premium hand-rolled cigars that we like to consume.
Right.
All right, so top 3. Swisher out of Jacksonville, Florida. Their revenue in 21 was 2.3 billion. So Swisher is famous for Swisher Sweets, obviously. That's their sort of flagship brand. They're, I think, I'm pretty sure that in the United States, the top two brands that they sell together, which would be the Swisher Sweets Original and the Diamonds, they actually sell more of those than the next 5 best-selling large cigar brands combined. So they have a huge footprint in the United States. And Swisher owns Drew Estate. So when you come in and you smoke your Kentucky Fire Cure, that's a brand owned by Drew Estate, which is owned by Swisher.
And Drew Estate, I guess Drew Estate. So Altadis, right, separates Monte Cristo, H. Upmann, Romeo and Juliet, and then Drew Estate. It's weird. Like they could have Acid be its own brand, but instead
it is its own brand.
It is its own brand, but it's more of a line than a distinct company brand.
But this is where confusion around brand exists, which, by the way, companies do on purpose.
Yeah.
But just like the Toyota Tacoma, the Tacoma is a brand. I mean, Taco for life, right? There's whole internet communities, but it's a line of Toyota.
Right.
But Toyota has its own brand.
Right.
But then Toyota Trucks has its own brand because Toyota truck people, which I am admittedly, right? Like you drive a Camry, I drive a 4Runner. We're not in the same group. We are not alike, right?
We are not the same.
Shout out to Slim Shady.
We are not alike. There's not alike us on the
All right, so let's wrap this up. Eastern Company out of Cairo, Egypt. They're actually number 2, just shade under $1 billion. Not super relevant to the United States, but huge in Europe. And I think they might be number 1 in Europe. So they're they're a big player in the sense that they monopolize a bunch of shit that everyone has to compete for.
And it's so F too, man. I'm dealing with what do people in Gettysburg buy versus what do the Hanover customers buy, right? And these guys are like, oh, what's the difference between Bosnian customers and customers from Massachusetts?
Right.
Right. What's the difference between France and Luxembourg?
Right.
Like who prefers what in what country? Yeah. And I'm over here like, oh, these stores are 30 minutes away. What's going on?
Right. And of course, the big kahuna is Imperial out of England. And their 2022 revenue was $41.5 billion. And they own pretty much everything. Of course, we're familiar with Altadis. We mentioned them. But it seems like out of these top 10, I think 5 of them are subsidiaries of Imperial, which is number 1.
Unreal.
Yeah, 32,000 workers, 51 factories, 160 countries. I mean, they are the global 800-pound gorilla.
Yeah.
So that's the business management side. This is what owns the brands and distribution and everything that you're used to. So hopefully that sorts some things out for our listeners.
And I'll say one thing real quick. These are the guys that make the decisions.
Correct.
Right. And so shit gets discontinued. You love X brand, X cigar, and the way they made it 10 years ago, right? But, the board of directors, the shareholders, right? These are the guys that are making decisions. It's not the master blenders on the factory floor.
Right.
They're getting told what to do.
Right.
And that's why boutiques are so important, because the boutique guys have more of an ability to call the shots for their own companies than these big guys do. And
reminds us of our episode on the Timeless, right, by Ferry Ortega.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Thanks, Altria. So let's finish up by talking about Habanos SA. So Habanos SA is the state-owned company that basically manages all of the cigars coming out of Cuba. So what is different about them is they're state-owned. Cuba is a communist country. Their 2022 revenue was $500 million, so they're not super large. And of course, it's a single island, and they solely control the distribution, promotion, and export of Cuban cigars. They don't control the growing, the aging, the factories, or whatever. They kind of do because the state planners do determine what gets grown and how much, and there's quotas, right? This is part of the state budget, right? So Habanos SA was formed when Cuba Tabaco and Altitas merged, 50-50 split. Of course, there's the Monte Cristo, Romeo y Julieta, Cohiba, and all of those Cuban brands are different from the brands that you smoke in the United States. Same name brand, but the cigars are made with Cuban tobacco.
Probably upwards of 10 of those.
Yeah, there's
10 to
quite
15
a bit.
probably, yeah, that have Americanized.
Upman,
Yeah. Bolivar.
Partagas,
Yeah.
all of these are Cuban brands that they kind of they played off of the brand so that they could sell cigars in the U.S. Totally different. It's not even close to being the same. So there's almost nothing else I can compare it to. The closest I could come would be like, if like Harley Davidson, they sell a 350 cubic centimeter liquid cooled street bike in China, right? I think it's called the XR 350 or something. That's an example. Like, it has the Harley Davidson name. It's not a Harley. It's completely different. It's only sold in this other country. They just borrowed the brand name. It's manufactured in China. All of this stuff. That's probably the closest comparison I can make.
And it's not even, it's something that I've learned kind of recently is that it's not like the same Cohiba company has a half distribution in America, half with Habanos. Like, they are two completely different. The only thing that's the same is the name.
That's right. They're trying to play off of the brand.
Right. It's piggybacking off of the reputation that's already been built.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're completely different experiences. So one of the things that I guess makes Habanos SA unique is because of the counterfeiting that happens with Cuban cigars. Habanos SA always chooses one company to distribute their cigars to in any given country, right? So in the United Kingdom, Hunter's Francow has the agreement to distribute the cigars. Now, what they do with that internally to the UK, that's up to them, but Habanos will only send Cuban cigars to them.
Like one point of entry.
Yes.
Yeah. And then from there it gets spread out.
Intertabac in Switzerland, for example.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how Habanos SA works. And of course, in the U.S., we don't get distribution of Cuban cigars because of the embargo that we've had in place since the 60s. So that's the cigar industry in a nutshell. So, Nick, why don't we return to this Rojas Street Taco Barbacoa? And I'm about halfway done with my cigar. I've noticed yours has burned very well.
Yeah, this has been elite construction. A 10 out of 10 experience. Something really that I've really enjoyed watching John's kind of waver and wither. Yours is actually doing pretty well right now.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm doing more talking. It's
Yeah.
always hard to keep the cigar lit. But you've got this like 1.25 inch ash in a tray that I can like pinch and pick up.
Yeah.
And it's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
A lot of like white flake on there, which has to do with the aging. So it looks like it was aged well. Tell me about your tasting now that we're well into the second third.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I don't know about you. You can comment on this, but I'm not getting anything new that I've never tasted in the cigar before. Mm-hmm. So this is very, like, as far as flavor consistency goes with the Street Taco, in my life experience, it has been as consistent as can be. There's nothing like, no weird pockets of bad flavor or anything like that.
Yeah.
But the most predominant flavors I'm getting right now are like that dirt s'more that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Fresh cut grass, actually. There's like a little sweetness to grass that's fresh cut, like kind of that hits your nostrils, right? And I'm getting a little bit of that. And then I'm also getting a lot of the woodsy notes, and I think you hit it too with the dry woodsy.
Yeah, I think the elements that have kind of increased as I've gone along is the meaty, right? It has a meaty flavor now, and chili pepper, right? Not black pepper, not white pepper, chili pepper, which is kind of cool because Street Taco, right?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Kind of goes with it, right? The carrier note is still dry wood. There's still some chalk, but it's like creamy chalk now. The only dry flavor, non-dry flavor.
Yeah,
right.
less dry chalk.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of coffee grounds in there, and agree. There's like an earthy, grassy, sweet, kind of flavor as well. Very enjoyable, and they play well together. Right. This is not the kind of cigar where you have different tastes like the Cohiba Weller.
Right.
This is a single taste that you can break down if you're paying attention like we do.
Yeah.
But they really play well together.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is we've each smoked it, probably in the teens, 20s of these in our collective experience, and it's the same every time. It's really consistent. Mm-hmm. Your draw's good. I'm gonna imagine my draw's excellent.
Draw's good. Smoke output is good.
Yeah.
It's not a smoke bomb, but the smoke is there.
Yeah.
The other thing is the smoke is a little chewy, which again with the Street Taco name it kind of goes, So with that, I think it is time to rate this Rojas Street Taco Barbacoa 6x50 Toro. And Nick, we'll start with you on presentation. What do you think about the presentation?
I love this maybe because I'm a contrarian, and I love shaking the industry up with, as the young child that I am. I give this a 10. I laugh in the face of those who say, you can't put this on a cigar. You can't put this band on a cigar. You can't put this branding on a cigar. And I mean, the cigar is gorgeous. The tobacco itself is nearly flawless.
All right. So presentation, the box is eye-catching but modest. The 16 cigars, interesting count choice there. In their cellophane wrappers, pretty normal presentation. I think I think some folks walk past it because of the presentation. I give it a 6. I do like that it's different, but honestly, like the first time I saw it, I assumed that it was like an infused cigar because it kind of has that vibe to it. Right?
Oh, I eat this shit up. This might be one of our biggest differences, but I love this stuff.
All right, so moving on to price. This cigar sells for $9.50 here at Union Cigar, Hanover, Pennsylvania, USA. Nick?
A 9. I mean, this cigar, this cigar has a chance to go on my Mount Rushmore. Just all things considered, So, this is a 9. All my scores are going to be high.
Yeah, I've got a 9 for price as well at $9.50 sub $10. Super competitive price point, and you're getting a great cigar for it. So I've got a 9 there as well. Moving on to construction. Nick, what have you got?
This has been unbelievable. My burn has been razor sharp. I'm going to finish this cigar with 2 ashes. Right, so the first one I knocked off 30% of the way through, and then this one I'm going to knock off probably 85% of the way through. No draw issues. This is the perfect construction experience. This is a 10.
10 for Nick on construction. I've got a 9. Agree with everything you said. This is a well-constructed cigar, and I've smoked enough of these. They're all the same. They're all superbly constructed. I don't know what method they're using.
Yeah.
But one thing that I look for is the cap, and I have yet to have a cap that has a bubble in it. And that's one of the most common, construction issues. And I give them a 9 on construction. All right, moving on to flavor. Nick, what have you got for flavor?
As far as a natural Colorado color, Sumatran, wrapper goes, I don't know, there are different flavor profiles I expect with different wrappers, and I think that this one does the Ecuadorian Sumatra a great deal of justice. This is a 9.
9 for flavor,
because it doesn't taste like a Maduro, right? It doesn't taste like a Connecticut. It's it does what it's supposed to do very well.
Yeah, I've got it at a 9 as well. So the flavor is coherent. It works well. It goes with the branding, and it's delicious. This is just a delicious cigar. It might not be heavy enough for some people, and Sumatran wrapper I've found has either you love it or you hate it kind of thing. I think this is probably the best presentation of a Sumatran wrapper that I've smoked. So I've got a 9 for flavor as well. And then overall experience. Nick, the most subjective of our grading elements.
So this is interesting too, because like it goes along with the branding part of what you're saying. Like Noel Rojas, like what he does adds to the experience of the cigar. Mm-hmm. Right. So the fact that he makes that kit with the different like puros, like the cheroots and whatever, like small ring gauges only, right? A company theme, a company motto, right? I love that. The wrapper to filler ratio. It's a 10.
So Nick has a 10 for experience. I gave it a 9 for experience. Agree. Like, so we talk about kind of where you can smoke a cigar. This is a very versatile cigar. You know, it's not a celebration cigar per se, but I would, the price point is right for going fishing or doing yard work. It's not too heavy, so you can do stuff while you're smoking it. It's absolutely delicious. You can have it after a meal.
Or at 9 in the morning.
Or at 9 in the morning like we're doing. It is strong enough. I'm not sure it's a breakfast cigar, like a before I've eaten kind of thing. Should have thought of that before I started the podcast. But very versatile and great experience and delicious. So I've got it at a 9. So my total score for the Rojas Street Taco Barbacoa is a 42, and Nick has got a 48.
This is by far the highest.
By far the highest. That gives us a combined score of 45. Our previous high score was a 42, and that was for the Herrera Esteli Miami. So we have a new high score cigar, and at a price point that everybody can smoke. So get your butt down here to Union Cigar Hanover, pick up a Street Taco, and come enjoy it, and let us know what you think. For Nick and I and Burnline Podcast, thank you for joining us this week. We will see you again next week. Goodbye, everybody.